At age 57, she has made more money than most by dispensing direct, frank sex advice to the love-lorn, love-torn, and love-worn. You may not always be able to remember her name, but you can never forget the voice of Dr. Ruth Westheimer.
Hello, you're on there.
Hi, Dr. Ruth.
Hello.
I'm calling from California.
Dr. Ruth Westheimer has taken sex out of the bedroom and put it on the airwaves.
My basic question is, why don't my relationships work out?
Hundreds of thousands of listeners across the country call her cable television and radio talk shows to ask, for example, what to do if you're sexually confused.
Okay, wait. Is there a man that you want or a woman?
Men.
Then go after him.
Or how to attract men when you're single and...
I'm pregnant, and I'm going to have a baby any day.
This German-born sex therapist has turned direct talk about our nation's naughtiest subject into a corporate conglomerate. Besides her TV and radio programs, syndicated now in 90 markets, she has written 3 books of sexual advice for singles, young teens, and married couples. She endorses products, everything from soft drinks to condoms. You can buy the Dr. Ruth video, which dispenses sexual advice in the comfort of your living room. You can even play the Dr. Ruth board game, in which the players must move along arousal paths to win.
Gladys, roll the dice.
Don't rush me, Howard. The game says mutual pleasure.
And wouldn't you have guessed it, this fall, Dr. Ruth will star in a French movie.
Alors, où elle est?
Elle est là-bas au fond, à gauche.
Venez. Venez. Lâchez-moi. Is that the anatomy of the first French lady?
Now, everyone's making a big to-do over you. I mean, you have become the star of stage, screen, the book circuit, the lecture circuit, and everything else. And you're pretty good at merchandising, Dr. Ruth.
True. I don't know where I learned that from. But you see, I use it within the framework that I believe in. So it all has to have some sense for me. At the same time, it should be fun. Human sexuality must be taught with pleasure.
But doesn't that kind of take away from your professional image?
Not for me. I tell you what's written in the Talmud, in the Jewish tradition. A lesson taught and learned with humor is a lesson retained. That's what I'm doing. And that's what I did before I was Dr. Ruth.
But what she did before she was Dr. Ruth, the guru of sex education, was to get herself into the kind of trouble she now preaches you should avoid. As a young, unmarried woman, when there wasn't much sex education, Ruth didn't follow what would today be a doctor's advice. She didn't use a contraceptive. You became pregnant with your child, but you were in a relationship that you then married.
But this is something I did marry. I was pregnant, but that was much before I was Dr. Ruth. I just did that out of my convictions. This happened, and I loved the man, and I got married.
And you have no embarrassment about that?
No, because otherwise I wouldn't have talked about it. And now I'm married for 25 years, and Fred adopted Miriam, and we then had Joel, and we are a very happy family.
How did you talk?
The reason I talked about that is very important, because I do believe there's a reason to the things that I do. I believe that people should not come across as if they were saints. This is why I don't want to sound like a show-off, but this is why I'm successful. This is why people believe me. This is why I have credibility, because I say, of course, things happen in life. You don't predict everything, and then make the best out of it.
Well, as a parent, and as a parent who at that time, you were steeped in sexuality, you knew about it, you were teaching it.
No.
With your children. I'm saying when it came to your children,
yes.
when your children were a good size. Was there a time when the parent, Dr. Ruth, was at war with Dr. Ruth and how to talk to your own children about sexuality?
Of course.
How did you handle it?
I tell you how I handled it. When my daughter went out, I stood at the window waiting for her to come home, but I would never admit it. I would fast. When I saw that she was dropped off, fast. I would get into bed and make believe that I'm sleeping. So of course there's a conflict, and one just has to know how to navigate.
Did you give different instructions to Joel than to Miriam?
I have a little bit of that. I was much freer of giving my car to Joel than to Miriam. And I'm embarrassed about it, but you see, Monica, I'm telling you that.
There seems to be a double standard when it's acceptable for boys to have sex. And girls are told to keep their dress down and their panties up.
No, in that respect, I did teach the same thing for both responsibility and relationships. I did not say it's all right for you to have experiences, but I tell you something else, Monica. I would never ask my children about their love life. Their love life is none of my business, and my love life is none of their business. I think this is very important, a lesson to teach to all of us, because this kind, we don't own our children. And there are certain aspects of my children's lives that are none of my business.
Now I'm going to be nosy. Did you give your daughter any premarital advice just before she got married? You said she just married. I mean, were you the Jewish mother and you went in and said...
I was certainly the Jewish mother for everything that had to do with that wedding day. The food and the flowers and everything else. Sex, I left aside. I don't think she needs me.
Dr. Ruth is a doctor of psychology and says she continues to see patients privately. But even some of her peers feel it can be dangerous dispensing instant sexual advice on national broadcast to people she knows little about.
I know my limitations. I know when to say to a person, I cannot help you, you need a psychiatrist. That comes with experience. Very important for a sex therapist like myself to know my limitations.
But for people who think she has no business being on the air talking about sex, it's the things she does say that cause the controversy.
I believe that the best sexual experience is within a relationship. I'm not necessarily saying marriage.
When should you first talk to your child about sexuality?
We have to be parents that can talk and transmit those values from an early age. Now, you're not going to talk to a 4-year-old about cesarean section, but talk to a 4-year-old how babies are born and how they are being made.
Should men or women have affairs?
I would never say they ought to have them, because it does depend on the individual. I don't call it an affair, because an affair, in my mind, means a relationship. It means already some commitment, it means some love, it means more than a fling.
But you're saying that it is better not to have an affair. If you do have an affair, don't tell.
Yes, I am saying in most cases, if there's no danger of being found out, and if it is a fling, keep your mouth shut. Because even if that partner says, I forgive you, I can assure you at the next fight, he or she is going to say, and you remember what you did in Atlanta? Now, God forbid, don't you say in Atlanta, in the South, that Dr. Ruth Westheimer says, go out and have affairs.
But even so, Dr. Ruth's open discussion about sex and the anatomy have a lot of people very upset. Now, in the Bible Belt where we're from, sometimes they feel that it should not be discussed openly at all, that you are taking on matters that should be taught in the home.
Monica, when somebody says a program like this should not be on the air, I say I respect your opinion. Move your dial. But let those people who want to learn, watch. And people hear me say that young people have to first learn to be responsible before they engage in sexual activity. Everybody knows that about me.
Now, let's say your marriage has a lot of age on it. You've been married 20, 30, 40 years.
I like the way you say there's a lot of age on it.
How do you keep the zest in it that you had when you were a newlywed?
Not easy. I say, prepare your sexual encounter the way you prepare a Japanese meal. Make it look good, make it smell good, make it taste good. Let's say at home, take maybe a bubble bath together. Maybe for 20 years you didn't take a shower together. let's do some things that are not necessarily, that don't cost money, but that show a concern. If you have a backyard, I hear that in Atlanta very often there are beautiful nights, right? The stars out. Take a blanket in the backyard and maybe, I'm not saying to have actual sexual intercourse there, but do the foreplay there. Take 2 pillows out there and just lie there, the 2 of you together, look at the stars, especially if you are tired.
Well, Dr. Ruth, do you practice what you preach? You've been married, what, 24 years?
Would I answer you that? Never. Now, just to give you a tiny little answer, I tell you what works for me. To go skiing works wonders, because you fly down that mountain and the air and the sunshine and the sky, and I do believe that skiing is sexually very arousing.
She says the funniest call she ever received was from a man who wanted to make his wedding night special.
And I said, you know, after the party and after the 2 of you are alone and you are in the hotel, let her go to the bathroom first and go into bed. Then you go to the bathroom. When you walk out of the bathroom, don't wear pajamas. Wear only a tie and a top hat. And then he asked me, where should he put the top hat? And I laughed. I did what you're doing, Monica. I giggled. I thought it was a funny, funny question. And it gave me an opportunity to say how important it is to talk and teach about sexuality in a humorous way, and that anything that 2 consenting adults do in the privacy of their bedroom, bathroom, living room, kitchen floor is all right.
Now, you know the U.S. Supreme Court just said that the support of the sodomy law in Georgia.
I know. I'm very unhappy about this. As you know, Monica, we do not know the etiology, the reason for homosexuality. And for us to cast a stone on people who do not choose to be anyway is just, in my way of thinking, immoral.
Did you ever think that talking about sex, what some people would consider talking about something that is quote-unquote dirty, would make you famous and wealthy?
I would never. I would have said to you, Monica, you must be dreaming. I would have said absolutely never. I, as you know, come from, I've had many years where every dollar had to be turned 3 times, especially when I was a single mother. That's another reason why I talked about that. If I would have known that I'm going to get my clothes for free, my hair is done, I'm being picked up in limousines all over the place, I don't know if I would have ever, I certainly wouldn't have believed it. But you see what, Monica? I know it's not going to last, because it will last a couple of more years, who knows. But I know it will not last forever. Somebody else is going to come on the scene who will do it maybe better than me. And then I'm going to say, I've had a good time.